Good afternoon and welcome to the TaxCalc Power Hour, officially recognised as the best hour by a consortium of experts in their field. This is your chance to get together with TaxCalc users of varying levels of experience. We've got seasoned long-term users and complete rookies in the room today, and there's always something that you can learn from us or from each other. I send out a big hello to Robert Campbell, who I met a few weeks ago at Accountex North, who's been an accountant for a full 53 years. It was a pleasure to meet you, Robert. Today we're going to be focusing on the impending tax deadline, the busy season, and exploring tips and tricks to help that go a whole lot more smoothly. I'm joined once again by Nick Moss, who heads up the customer training and onboarding here at TaxCalc, and also by Dean Shepherd, our head of customer engagement and education. You could not be in better hands. We'll be sharing some of our favourite tricks and tips based on the feedback we had in the poll that many of you were kind enough to complete when you registered. But we're really keen to hear any ways in which you've made TaxCalc work better for you and that you'd be willing to share. So, to get you warmed up, I'd like you to open the chat box, bottom right-hand side of the screen, and let us know what you would vote for as the best hour. You can interpret that in any way you like. What's your best hour, Nick?
My favourite hour is probably the Ben Stokes and Jack Leach innings at the 2019 Headingley Test. I know this comes a close second, but that's what I've had as my favourite hour.
I think that was in the running for best hour.
It was close, but you know, the Power Hour topped it.
Dean, favourite hour of all time?
Favourite hour of all time?
Yeah.
Oh, that must be the last time I spent an hour on HMRC's helpline.
It was though, wasn't it?
The one where they used to play Mr. Blue Sky in 8-bit audio. That was a particularly fun hour for me and the rest of the office when I put it on the speakerphone too.
I'm sure. I bet they did. I want to hear your best hours. My best hour, I think, was it's the free hour that you get when the clocks go back, when you realise that there's a whole nother hour at the day and it's coming up soon. So I'm going to be very excited about that one. Okay, so have we had votes for favourite hours?
Elliot's was the Champions League final between Liverpool and AC Milan. I'm assuming, Elliot, that was the second hour, not the first hour, I expect. Elliot,
yeah,
that was your favourite, depending on who you support, to be honest.
We'll be coming back to favourite hours, but we want to get you limbered up. And just so you know, the chat is where we're going to be focusing most of our time today. So use that chat function to open up discussions between everybody. We will see those, as will the rest of the audience. If you do want to communicate exclusively with us and no one else will see it, use the Q&A function, but we're going to focus on the chat function. And to avoid all doubt, yes, we will be sending a recording of this, so you do not need necessarily to take notes. So, without further ado, we started in the last Power Hour, we did a quiz format and it went down really, really well. So we're going to do the same again. We've got a number of themes that came out of the poll that we shared with you when you registered. And I'm going to kick off with a quiz for you. So, again, it's going into the chat box. If you, we're going to take the first correct question is the winner, and the winner gets a point. And points mean nothing at all. You get nothing. So, first question: which two features within TaxCalc carry their own trademark and are designed specifically to point out errors?
It's a tough one this week, I think.
It's a real toughie.
Yeah, a bit tougher than last month. I'm sure Sarah's probably quickly typing on a keyboard now. Yeah, which two areas in TaxCalc carry the trademark, but yeah, should make it a bit quicker and easier to fill in.
It's because we've got Dean in. He's set some tough questions coming up later. You're going to enjoy these.
I think Raz has got one.
Have we got one?
Check at the end.
The check at the end. Are we going to? That hasn't necessarily. You need the trademark name. I don't think. I'm not going to. That's it, Sarah. Well done.
Our reigning champion.
Good to see you back, Sarah. Thank you. Check and finish. And there's one other one. What's the other one that's got a trademark? Anyone know?
No, it's more difficult, to be honest.
Go on, Nick.
It's simple step. Yeah, simple step and check and finish, the two trademark terms that TaxCalc have in terms of making it easy for you to fill in the various different areas of the TaxCalc suite. And I think that was kind of one of the areas, wasn't it, Andy, that people really wanted to focus on was what areas in TaxCalc do we have that will help the users prevent errors and allow you to fill in areas of the tax return and set of accounts more easily. So if I just start jumping in and show you how some of those things would work in TaxCalc, if I share my screen now. So effectively, hopefully you should all recognise this. So I make this joke every single power hour. If you don't recognise this, I think we've got bigger problems. But effectively, if I open up tax return production, at the top, I search for the client which I'm going to work on, which will be Ronald Chang, and open up, say, the 2023 tax return. This taskbar down the left-hand side is our simple step method. There you go, there's the wording simple step to answer the question to the first quiz. And effectively, you can run down that left-hand side to fill in the different sections of the tax return. Now, I appreciate that in some of the different sections that we're going to go through throughout the hour, Dean's going to go into a few specific sections that will help you complete it a bit easier, a bit quicker, and hopefully make a few less errors. But there's a few things that I think that maybe some of you aren't aware of that should make it a bit easier for you to fill in. So, for example, hopefully you're all aware of being able to go into the different sections of the tax return down the left-hand side by a simple step. But sometimes a client might ring up and say, I'm struggling with something on page 3 in a certain box, and I don't know, they're not very good at articulating what issue they're having with. So you can click Switch to HMRC Forms, this button on the left-hand side at the top of the taskbar, and then if you go down to the SA100 core return, you would have your 8 different pages of that tax return, of which if I click on, say, page 4, I can then click on, say, this box here. So you could basically, your client can bring up and say, I'm struggling with something on page 4, in box 8. You can click in box 8 and then click Switch to Simple Step again in the top left-hand corner, and that would then take you back to the box to fill into via the Simple Step method. So effectively, being able to fill it in directly from the face of the tax return as well as via the simple step method. So that's one recommendation I would make when filling in a tax return via TaxCalc. You've got the simple step method that everyone knows and loves, but being able to flick between that and HMRC Forms is probably an underrated part of the TaxCalc system. As well as that, we've also got, as it was mentioned by Sarah, we've got our trusty check and finish, which will then give you any errors when completing tax return. Now, I've probably got more errors than I expect you would normally see when producing a tax return. Let's just say it's quite good that I'm on this side of the desk rather than the accountant side anymore. But effectively, being able to go through this different section and click the Go button on the right-hand side to take you straight to that area where TaxCalc suggests you might need to go and fill in a bit more information. That's a really, really popular part of the TaxCalc system. But I think one area that in particular me and Dean were talking about this morning, which I think probably goes unnoticed even more than check and finish, in the personal tax product specifically, is on the left-hand side, the ability to go into the tax considerations section, where TaxCalc provides another area where it's going, are you sure you don't want to fill this information in? For example, it's telling me at the top there, where there is property income but no finance cost claims, check that mortgage interest is being claimed where relevant. So it's kind of just suggesting things that I might want to consider before potentially sending this information to my client to review, or potentially asking me to ask the clients more questions when completing that tax return. Another one there at the bottom, for example, if you perform work duties from home, there could be expense claims available, and of which they'd still have the Go button, very similar to check and finish, for me to click Go on, and it will take me to the relevant section within Simple Step to go and fill in that specific area of the tax return. So it's a really nice additional bit of information that TaxCalc's just going, I think you might want to check this before you send that tax return to the client and ask them some more additional information that might be beneficial to that client record.
Awesome. And what I would like to say is, if you guys out there have any additional tips, usage of Simple Step, usage of check and finish, for example, that you've discovered that we've omitted and you'd like to share, please do post them in the chat. We can pick you up. We can even bring you in to the call and you can talk us through it. But Dean, you've got some other useful tricks up your sleeve, haven't you?
Yes, I've got a couple of things that I can show people here. Interestingly, if people could just raise their hand if they'd not seen tax considerations before, because I'd be really interested to see who that's a new piece of functionality for. I must admit, when we were having a discussion this morning about what me and Nick were going to show, I don't know whether I should say this on a recorded thing, but Nick said, "Oh, shall I do tax considerations?" And I was like, "I have no idea what you're talking about, Nick.
We've got a lot of hands.
Yeah, we've got
a lot of hands.
24 hands, so that's at least 24 people still listening, Dean, after I started. So yeah, there's quite a few people who weren't aware of that either, Dean, so don't worry about that.
Fabulous. So something else that people may or may not be aware of that I always found quite useful is the variance analysis report that we've got within summaries. So I've just gone into a tax return client here, and it's the very last one on the list of summaries on the left. So if I click on variance, and what we can see here basically is figures from the current year against the previous year's tax return, what the absolute difference is between the numbers and a percentage, or if there is a new item, it will just say new, or if it's an item that was in last year's tax return but not in this year's, then it will say ceased. So I find this as a super useful way just to double check once you've done a tax return, scan down this list. Is there anything here that's obvious that should have gone on the tax return that isn't here, that perhaps the client hasn't provided or we haven't asked for? Or are there some figures that are wildly different from last year, and that's unusual and we don't have an explanation for them? If you're particularly keen, you can click this button here that will expand out this list to basically any number anywhere on the tax return. I didn't tend to use this because you can get duplicates because it's picking up totals and individual lines, but that will give you everything as a variance analysis. But I think that's a super useful one just to pick up any items that you may have missed. If there's things there that aren't relevant, then you can just click through and ignore them if they're not, so you're just left with the most important ones. And if you do want to go to that particular box on the tax return, just clicking go will take you straight there. So I always found that super useful. You can do the usual exporting and printing, so you can save that on the file or for review, but that's our variance report. Another thing I want to show you is Andy's favourite part of our entire suite of software solutions, and that is our What If Planner. Again, hands up anybody that uses What If Planner right now, because it's one of our favourite tools, but again, I'm always interested to know who else uses this, because this is basically creating a projected calculation for the next tax year. So we update this for the latest rates and tables, so in this case 23-24, so that you can populate this information with income for next year and give your client a projection of next year's tax liability. So you can either just go through and add any income sources you like, but what I was always tend to do is use the 22-23 values. So you've just done this tax return, let's populate it. And if you did nothing else, if all the income was going to be the same next year as it is this year, then this will give you a tax calculation using 23-24 rates, so you can provide that additional information to the client to let them know what their next year's tax liability could be if things don't change. So just doing that alone, I think, is a really useful add-on to the information that you provide to your client. But you can also go in and edit any of these figures. So if your client has told you, let's say that they've told you that your their self-employment income is going to reduce, then you can just change those figures. If you know there's going to be capital gains next year, you can add those in. So there's all kinds of different adjustments you can make to that calculation to see what the new tax liability could be. And I would say for any clients that are making payments on account for next year, or you're considering reducing those payments on account, I would always run this report so that you can justify by how much you've reduced those payments on account, or made the decision that actually we don't think it's worthwhile reducing those payments on account. So you've always got it on record, because if your client comes back to you next year, you've reduced the payments on account, but actually their income hasn't gone down, then you want to have some evidence as to why that was done back when you did the 22-23 return. So we're big fans of What If Planner, aren't we?
We're massive fans of What If Planner. I'm going to get a What If Planner t-shirt.
I think we should trademark What If Planner. Actually, add that as the third.
No one else has got that.
I mean, just to back Dean up on there, one of Danny's clients, so Danny's not with us this month, but one of Danny's clients was using the What If Planner and actually created two separate versions of that What If Plan document for if they were to sell a property and generate capital gains tax, and one if they didn't. So in terms of tax planning and tax planning for the next year based on whether they sold the property or not. So it's not as if that What If Planner can't be saved down and then produce another one and feel like you're overwriting that data. You can produce as many different versions of that What If Planner document that you like based on the various different tax options and decisions that your client might make. So I appreciate Danny's not here today, but that was one that we spotted at a firm that we were at last week that they were utilising the What If Planner for various different versions of a document for their client.
Yeah, I've just noticed there were a couple of questions came in I thought we'd address. I know Nick always likes to address this question. When will TaxCalc handle group accounts, Nick?
So we're looking at around the first quarter, first half of next year. It all depends on any legislation changes that are potentially coming through, and obviously development cycles. But yeah, effectively looking at March, April next year.
No, that'll be late next year. LLPs are coming.
No, LLPs will be out next week, Andy.
Next week. Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. Groups is coming next year. You're right.
You worried me a little bit there, Andy. LLPs will be out in the next release in the next week. For LLPs for full FRS 1 or 2.
He's correct.
But then with groups, you're looking at the first quarter. Again, there could be a little slippage in towards June next year, but you're looking at probably March, April, depending on if everything goes as planned.
He's right. Okay, so if you are one of the people that have come into the group since we started, and there have been a number, you are watching the Power Hour, where we stumble through various tricks and tips about how to use TaxCalc more effectively, and we've just covered some fascinating stuff about how you can avoid errors in your producing a tax return, and I think the tax considerations has gone down very well, described by Vicky, hi Vicky, as a game changer. There you go, it's official. It's a game changer. Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. So, question 2 in the Great TaxCalc quiz. What is the name of the document that TaxCalc produces which contains last year's tax data for requesting the current information? Answers in chat, please. What's the name of the document that TaxCalc produces which contains last year's tax data for use for this when you're requesting this year's? So we're going to hit the chat. Is Sarah going to hit the...
We've had a couple of close ones. We're after the exact wording, as always. It's very particular.
It's like Sarah Diamond's absolutely
there we
spot
go.
on. Sarah's got it. The client questionnaire.
The client questionnaire. Fantastic. Well done, Sarah. Good. Well played for that one. So yes, tell me more about the client questionnaire, Nick.
Yeah, so in terms of the client questionnaire, there's a few ways in which you can produce it. So if I share my screen again and take you through the preparation of a client questionnaire, effectively you would go to your practice manager area in the top left-hand corner, and then on the left-hand side you've got communications. There on the left-hand side you would then have create client questionnaire. And if you run down this left-hand side, it will guide you through producing it. So under criteria, you will ask, based on the tick boxes, which tax year do you wish to request the data for? I appreciate at the minute I've only got 22-23. When the next release comes out in March for the next tax year, you will effectively have the 23-24 in there. You would want to potentially include a checklist of possible incomes, outgoings, reliefs, and include show previous year values from wizards and worksheets. So I'd expect you to tick this box here that includes the previous year values that's included in last year's tax return that you filed through TaxCalc. Now, would you want to save all the questionnaires as one single Word document, or save them as separate files in the location that you choose? So obviously, it's recommended to save them as separate documents, but you can have them as one single document and print them off if that's your preferred way of doing it. But then in client selection, you will get to choose, do you want to send it to all of my individuals in the system? I could choose specific and pick just the individuals that I want to produce a document for, or you might want to have an advanced client selection data mine, potentially with a custom field of different tranches of sending your client questionnaire out to your clients, because you might not want to send this out to every single one of your clients on the 6th of April with the fear that they send you all of the information through on the 10th, right? Every single one. I appreciate that that's probably not going to happen, but the last thing you want is for all of your tax returns to come in at one go, and in the expectation that it's all done at the same time. So being able to separate out when you request the information, potentially via custom fields, and choosing I only want to send it to certain ones at that point in time. But effectively, if I did go to choose all and then click continue, you can choose, do you want to include a cover letter? And I appreciate these are just the default letters that TaxCalc comes with, but you can create a Word cover letter, upload it into TaxCalc, and it will then produce that at the same time as producing the client questionnaire.
Just a quick note.
Yep.
Sorry, Nick. I've just had a inbound from Ben downstairs, who says we'll be actually releasing the ability to create client 20 for 2023-24 early this year.
Oh wow! Right.
So
amazing.
in the December release, so you can start sending them out in February.
fantastic. Yeah, whether your client will fill them in February or not, I'm not too certain. But
Who knows?
having it prepared, ready to go, well in advance, I think will be massively beneficial for everyone involved. So yeah, thanks for that, Ben. Yeah, that's nice to hear that it's coming out much earlier than last year. Summary of questionnaire. Effectively, this will just give you a list saying what are you preparing, where's it being saved, everything. You click continue, and then that will produce that document for you. Now, effectively, what it would come out as a document, either individually for a specific client or en masse. It would come out looking like this. So this is my full income and expenditure report, effectively asking me to tick or mark the income relating to that particular section, but then running through to my questionnaire with information relating to what was filled in last year on my client's tax return compared to what you're requesting for the current year. So yeah, this type of document, being able to send this out either via communication center or through or print it out and post it to your client, hugely beneficial. Okay, so yeah, that type of document I expect is gold dust for those clients that you want to be able to produce out of TaxCalc. Some people probably didn't know you could even do that. So yeah, that's all included with your personal tax license.
Vicky's asking if the questionnaire be password protected?
Good question. I don't actually know. Dean, do you know the answer to that one?
I don't think it can, but you could add it to an e-sign envelope and then send that securely using e-sign center. But I don't think you can generate them to be automatically password protected as you create them.
No, don't believe so. I mean, you could effectively convert them to a PDF, and then if you've got a PDF encryptor, maybe with your Adobe license, that could be something which you could do, but then you wouldn't be able to then type into the relevant boxes if you have sent them online. So yeah, we'll have a think about that, Vicky, and potentially get back to you. So yeah, good question though. The other thing you might want to look at with TaxCalc as well as a client questionnaire is the ability again, if you're using Communication Center. So I appreciate Communication Center. I've been into this section a lot of times in the previous Power Hours. If you do want a lot more information in terms of what it can do and the functionalities around it, please do go onto our TaxCalc events page and view the previous Power Hours that myself and Andy have done. But effectively what you might want to do is to produce an email template that includes something along the lines of this. Now yours, I expect, will be a lot more detailed than mine, where it's in terms of requesting information from your clients earlier. But your wording will be a lot better than mine, right? Mine's just a default one that I've produced in TaxCalc. But what you'll be able to do in the admin center is set up, let me make sure I'm going to the right place, is to set up automated message settings so that, for example, where I've got request records for tax self-assessment, you'll be able to automate the generation of that email from a template from a particular email address that you select, and that can be for whatever email address that you have got verified in TaxCalc with Communication Center. You can see there I've got a silly wedding email address that I use just to make my emails working in TaxCalc. So I'll choose that one in there. Which template do you want to produce? So I'll have my request records for self-assessment. Generate the message when the following date is met. So I usually probably have the tax year end plus 1 day. So on the 6th of April, it's going to generate this email en masse for a group of clients or all clients. And you can have a reminder, potentially, say 60 days after the request, of which I could then might be able to send a different template, such as a request for records self-assessment reminder, where it will only send it out or only generate that email for the clients where the work item set hasn't gone past the records received step. So if you mark your tax return as the books have come in, or if you're using, you do that manually, or you could use our Practice Manager Plus tool to track where the jobs have gone up to. If the client has been marked, the books have come in, it will not generate that reminder email to go and request that information from your client again. So being able to have that set up across the board, so it generates the email automatically to go and request that information from the client again or remind them, is massively beneficial in TaxCalc. But again, what it will do, it will generate the email for you to review before sending it out. It doesn't automatically send it out without you checking it. That's one of the questions we always get on the training sessions is, I'm worried the system's just going to be sending out emails without me knowing. You have to review the emails before sending out. Even if that's 10 emails or 1,000, it's not going to send them out before you go in. Are you sure you're happy for these ones to go out?
So one of our, so Joanna has asked about, could you show us just how to send the client questionnaire through ComCenter?
So effectively, what you would have to do in ComCenter is I'd produce an email en masse, and again we can show you how to do that in the previous Power Hours. But effectively, you go to send message, you'd pick the you pick the email address you want it to go from. You'd pick your mailing list, which, as we said before, you'd choose like a tranche of clients, very similar to what we saw before in the client questionnaire. But if I choose my default one, so if I go to, let's use my payment on account one. I can appreciate this. I've got probably 10 clients in there. You pick your template, which would be, say, requesting records for accounts, so requesting records for self-assessment, should I say. And then here's my email. So if I go to preview message, I can pick, say, for Colin Carter, and you'll see it now says, Dear Colin, for 22-23, yeah, kind regards TaxCalc accountancy. You can obviously have your email signature at the bottom of that, so it's a bit more professional and looks like your email from the client. You would then click send later and pick a date. So let's say I'm going to choose, I'll choose the 27th. Let's say I wanted to go out on Friday. Click save, and then it saves it. If I then go to message activity and then say I'm looking for my pending emails that were due to go out on the 27th, we'll see these are the ones that I've just created here based on those clients on that mailing list, of which I will be able to select, click edit, and attach that, attach it straight from here. Effectively, it's this add attachment and add it from my document list elsewhere. So I'll be able to attach it, such as if I went to my desktop, I will then be able to attach, you've got to convert it to a PDF before you can attach it. I always forget that. It's something which we are looking at. I can't remember who asked that question. I don't know, Dean, if you want to, it looks like you've got a comment to add at this point in time.
Yeah, I think that is resolved in our next week's release. So you will be able to attach the client questionnaire as the Word doc that's generated. You don't need to change the format anyway.
Oh, brilliant. Right, there you go. Yep, so you'll be able to do it as of next week, be able to attach it on. And then you add each one on and then click send, and it will send all of those on there. So hopefully that's...
So they can be bulk sent?
Yes.
There you go, Gloria. They can be bulk sent. Fabulous. Okay, so we've got a lot of questions coming in on this. Do you want to tackle some of these, or do you want to go on to some of the areas that you've...
I think Nick's actually covered a lot of these in what he's demonstrated there, so I think we can probably
we'll move on. So yeah, you've got some interesting advice on...
Yeah, there's a couple more things I wanted to show. So if I go into... let's pick a different client this time. So another area that I think is very useful in terms of getting information that your client may not necessarily have provided you is in terms of investment information, so dividends I'm thinking of particularly here. So if I go into the dividends section for this client. So this is completely blank at the moment, but we have something called dividend database. Again, throw your hands up if you're an avid user of dividend database. I always found it very useful because what we do is we populate our dividend database with all the dividends for the tax year from FTSE 350 companies, AIM listed companies, and a few others as well. So I very rarely find a company that doesn't appear in here. So as long as you know which company you're looking for and the number of shares that your client held during the year, we should have the details of any dividends that your clients would have received. So if I populate that with 125 shares, and then that goes all in the boxes automatically, so you don't need to manually type any of those in. And then when you roll forward to the next tax year, those amounts again will remain there. So as long as there's been no changes in the shareholding, they'll be automatically populated and filled with next year's dividend data as well. It's also a useful check, even if your client does give you the information, it's a double check that they've given you everything, so they don't necessarily provide you with all the dividend vouchers for the year, so you can check that. Or if you see the figures coming into their bank account, that will indicate to you if there has been a change in shareholding, because you can check how much dividend they should have received versus what you see coming in their bank account. So I do find dividend database very, very useful for confirming dividends. Another thing I wanted to show was our joint income reporting tools. So there's two aspects to this. I found it most useful with with property income. So lots of people own properties jointly, whether it's between husbands, wife, spouses, or other ownership groups. So we've got this option here, joint property income. If you tick that box and then work our way through the simple steps, what we've got the option of doing here is entering the total property income and expenses, and then indicating what percentage ownership this client has of the property. So in this case, we've got 75% share of the property income. So that's automatically calculated the £12,000 there. And if we were to change that figure, then it would recalculate the individual share, and that does that for the income and expenses. And this has a couple of benefits. One of the benefits I will show you a little bit later on, but for me it was all about recording both figures so we know what figures we're dealing with, because often we ask the clients for their details of their rental property income and expenses, and then they send them to us, but we don't necessarily know whether that's the total figures that they've given us, and then we need to divvy it up, or whether they've only given us their share of the property. And sometimes clients switch up year on year. So I find if we can present both the total and their share, then there's never that confusion, and we present that information back to the client. It's much easier for them to understand and confirm. So that's one aspect of joint property. And then if I go into Ronald's wife, Violet, I can show you another aspect. So they've only just started having their renting out their property. So we haven't done a tax return for Violet before. So I'm going to create a new one for 2023. Doesn't have to be husband and wife, doesn't have to have any relation between the clients. But what I'm going to do now is use the joint income reporting tool that we've got up here on the Simple Step menu. And what we do here is select another tax return where we want to grab information and populate it into the tax return that we're working on. So we know that we've done Ronald's tax return, and we've put the information on his already. We don't want to go through the same process and re-enter all those figures again for Violet. So we're going to look at his 23 tax return, and then these are basically all the income and reliefs that Ronald's got, and we can choose which of those we want to bring into Violet's tax return, and pretty much all the sources on the tax return will be listed, whatever they got, and you can choose what you want to bring in. So in this case, we want to bring in the property income. So we'll import that. And then if we go down to the UK property section, then we can see that it's brought in the totals. What we don't do is bring in the percentage, because we don't want to end up with two lots of 75%. That wouldn't go down well. So in this case, we know that Violet has got the remaining 25% in this case, and then that's all those figures already calculated from the information that we already had on Ronald's tax return. So that's our joint income reporting tool.
Thank you very, very much for that run through. So we're cracking through, and we're running pretty good on time. So again, if you have any advice on gathering information, helping you compile that data in advance of doing the tax return that you found that you use, please do share. The other thing that came up a lot in the poll was around speeding up the process of completing tax returns, of finalising accounts for your clients. So the question, again, this is for a point. What section of the Corporation Taxes Act 2010 covers tax on loans to participants?
Participators.
Participators. I do apologise.
Not that Dean wrote that question for you, Andy, at all.
No, not that Dean wrote that.
No.
I'm impressed that you knew what
CTA
stood for. That's, that was a bonus point coming your way, Andy.
That's my. I do get a point for that.
Oh, lots
of
correct answers.
Lots of answers. Who was first one?
Gloria was first
Gloria.
in there with section 455. Yes, that's correct. And there is a follow-up question. So this is going to find out the age of some of the people on the call. So the follow-up question is, what was the previous section that tax on loans to participators was under the old Income and Corporation Taxes Act 1988? Oh, and the very young Vicky Ison has answered correctly with section 419. I'm sure there's a few people, me included, who still refer to it as section 419.
I think Sarah won. Sarah got the point.
No.
415.
Sarah went 415.
415. Oh, rookie.
Sorry, Sarra. You can't win back-to-back weeks.
It'll be too much. We'd be accused of impropriety. It'd be wrong. Damn it. Well done, everybody. I'm unlucky, Sarah. I'm sure that was just a slip of a key on there. So, okay, so Dean, you've got some interesting stuff to share around.
Yes, we're going
accounts.
to go into a different product this time, accounts production. People, throw your hands up on the Teams channel if you are using our accounts production solution. Let's go into this client here. So something I wanted to show is really to help you when you're reviewing and finalising a set of accounts. So I'd always certainly want to glance through the final set of accounts before it goes out to clients, just to make sure everything is hunky-dory and in the right place. And you may or may not know that we've got this switch to edit mode option up here on the top left. And by switching that on, if I hover over some of the figures here, anything with this little boundary box, we can now drill down into and take a closer look at those figures. So if I just see I've got distribution costs here, I've no idea how that 96,000 is made up without going into the working papers. So if I click on that, then that'll drill down, and now this gives us a breakdown of all the nominal accounts that make up that distribution costs figure for both years. So I can have a scan through and think, or have a look and see if I think that all looks reasonable and correct. We can go down further, so in any of these nominal accounts we can drill down, and this is all being done in a pop-up whilst you're still in the financial statement, so you don't have to go wandering off around the software to find this, go to the nominal ledger and drill down to the accounts that way. It's much quicker and easier. And then we can see everything that sits within that code, so you can have a scan through and check. And not only that, I can see here that I've got an item that looks like it's in the wrong place. We're looking at pension contributions here, but we've got a director's bonus. Again, I don't need to go off, find the journal, start making changes elsewhere. I can just click on that. This will take me to the original posting within the journal batch where that transaction was entered. And if I want to, I can just go in there and move that to the correct nominal code. Save and close that. That's updated on the fly. I can see my new figures look right. I can see the new totals here. And then if I click close, that'll be regenerating the figures in the financial statements, but I'm still here on the same page. I haven't had to navigate off anywhere. I've not ended up back at the front of the financial statements and then work my way back to where I was. So it's a really quick and easy way of reviewing those figures and giving a final sense check and making any adjustments if you need to before those accounts go out to the client.
Wonderful. So people are learning a great deal, as we're saying, on the list. I'd be interested to know what people are enjoying the most. So you've done the accounts drill down.
There's another one I want to show you actually that Nick was very keen on. He claims to have came up with this suggestion, and I'm not going to confirm or deny that being the case.
Well, I'll take some credit for one small part of the release that's coming out this time round, Dean.
Yep. And to do so, I'm going to use, I know this is Sarah's favourite part of TaxCalc, and that is the cog. So we're going to go straight from the accounts into the tax return using the cog. So I'm going to open up the corporation tax return for this client. Now, if we go to check and finish, again, we could work through these error messages and make sure everything's hunky-dory, but let's just assume it is for now. We've got the post-tax journal option here. So if I click on that, I'll choose the set of accounts that we want to post that journal into, and then we get this pop-up. So if you were to do this right now with a set of accounts on your version of TaxCalc, you will just see this top half, because what we've added in for the release that's coming out next week, that I've got a sneaky preview of running on my desktop at the moment, is adding in that section 455 tax liability as well. So on here, we've got a default narrative. You can overwrite that, add something to it if you wish. That's the journal narrative. These are the figures from the trial balance that we're going to send into the accounts from the tax return. Again, you can override those figures if you deem that necessary, and you can override the nominal accounts that you're sending it to. But these are all the default nominal accounts for both the corporation tax and the section 455 tax. If I were to post and close, then that would keep me within the tax return where I am. If I click post and view, that'll take me back into the accounts, right to the journal batch, and I can see that corporation tax journal is sat there, ready and waiting and posted into accounts production. So that's a very quick and easy way to get the tax figures from the tax return into the accounts, but also ensure that the exact figure is coming across and there aren't any typos when you're having to rekey that information in. So nice, useful extension to that functionality we've got coming out next week.
Yeah, and just to jump on that as well, Dean, one of the things about check and finish as well is that if your corporation tax figure doesn't agree between your accounts and tax, there will be a warning in the green section of accounts production in check and finish. So that should always be a nice little highlight to remind you that what you've got in your accounts doesn't agree to what you've got in corporation tax. So yeah, check and finish should still be able to highlight if there's anything in corporation tax from your corporation tax figure that doesn't agree to what's in accounts production.
Great, and I think there's one more thing I wanted to show on this section. And that's a product, again, I'll be super interested how many people use this one, so throw your hands up in the air. And that is our batch filer functionality. Now, whenever I think of batch filer, I'm always taken back to the good old days before online filing, where you're in January, you don't want to send all your tax returns off by post because you don't want to risk them getting lost and not getting filed. So you start to stack up all your tax returns in an empty photocopier paper box. And then a couple of you grab these boxes and you trot down to your local tax office. In my second favourite hour, Andy, 4:45 on the 31st of January.
Yeah.
Join the queue outside the tax office with your boxes of tax returns in hand. Lots of banter going on in the queue. You eventually get into HMRC's office and get them to stamp every single tax return, and you walk away with your stamped front cover to prove that it's gone in. And all that fun has disappeared with online filing. But batch filer always reminds me of the good old days, because this is an opportunity, rather than having to file each tax return one by one, which admittedly is not the most laborious task, but it perhaps is when you've had 20 come in through the door late in January. You can just queue them up, send them all off in one go and forget about them and go on about your business rather than sit there one by one. So let me just give you an example. So let's do an October batch. So we've had this for quite a while now, and you've always been able to do it for individuals, partnerships and trust returns. We've added in the facility to do it for CT600s now. So again, that's coming out in the release next week, or shortly thereafter. You can filter down here to find just the clients that you want to, and I tend to use tax work status so that we don't inadvertently try and submit any tax returns that hadn't been approved by the client. If I change that status to approved, you can see that now it's only going to grab those clients that we want.
Just on that, Dean, that is a really good use case for using Practice Management Plus, where effectively, if you're using Practice Management Plus, where it'll update the work statuses based on tasks being completed, and equally, if you sent a tax return to the client for approval through e-sign and your client then goes and signs it, it will automatically update the work status to say it's been approved by the client. So you could, at the end of each day in January, just go to the batch filer section, say, show me all the 2023 SA100s that have been marked as approved by client. It'll give you a list, and then it gives you that list that Dean had there. So yeah, I just think that purely looking at that section from a tax product perspective is great, but I think it integrates particularly well with the Practice Management Plus workflow tool and e-sign, as there's various different bits that can update that work status for you rather than you having to manually mark a tax return as approved by a client in the system.
Okay, so I'm going to add all those to be filed. Credentials are fine, that picks up from the database. We made a few improvements to this screen just to give a little bit more information if you are an existing user of Batch Filer. As you can see, we've got a list of all the clients, so I can check that I'm happy with all of those. We've got all the IR marks there, so if you are an avid checker of IR marks, I know we've had many conversations about IR marks.
We have indeed.
Andy, I think it is best practice to make sure you've got a signed version of the tax returns IR mark that you are submitting. Personally, I was never that fussy about it. If a client signed the tax return, sent it back to me saying, oh, you've got one too many L's in my surname, then I would just correct it and submit it, but don't necessarily follow what I did. And we can see here the tax work status, they're all approved by the clients. If you need to, you can open the tax return directly from here just to check everything's okay, go into your check and finish, make sure there's no errors outstanding. But if you're all good to go, then you can save and file. Now this is going to kick off my favourite graphic within our software, so brace yourselves. And remember, you don't have to sit there and watch all these being filed. You can just carry on working elsewhere within the product. But as this starts firing off to HMRC, look at this. We give you a nice little, look at that.
Look at that.
That's better than a little egg timer, isn't it? We
The
can see
slider.
those.
I don't know why Microsoft did never use the slider.
No, slider. So we'll see those go through, but as I say, you can wander off elsewhere within the product. You don't have to sit there and watch them, but I have to say I do like to just make sure they got in, so I quite like watching them. Once those have all gone through, you can see this has automatically updated the taxwork status that Nick was talking about earlier. So these are all now showing as being filed online to HMRC, date stamped. You may have noticed the pop-up that I ticked yes on earlier. That created an FBI receipt for all of these, and I can save these right now from here, either as a single PDF for everything that's been filed, or a PDF for each one of these. So if you do use Document Manager or other form of electronic document management, then that's quick and easy to get all those FBI receipts. If you don't, you can go into these individual clients as normal, go to the online filing screen, and the FBI receipt will be sat there ready and waiting for you. So that's our batch filer, Andy.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Dean. I'm not sure, there was quite a lot of people were saying that they were using the What If Planner, but the dividend database didn't come up so much. Batch filer, I'm not sure how many people are using. Throw up your hands if you're using batch filer. Be keen to know. And Sarah, if you remember our conversation about IR marks, I hope that you've been resolved now at your end. So we've got a lot of questions in around e-sign, and I think we're probably going to take those at another session because we're probably going to run out of time.
Yeah, I think with e-sign, especially with probably thinking about it, we probably should have included it in this one in terms of preparing for tax season. What we'll do is we'll make sure it's definitely included in the next Power Hour, a full run through of the options around e-sign. I'm pretty sure we did cover it in the first Power Hour we did in June. So if you are desperate to it, I'm pretty sure it's in there. But equally, you can contact your account manager, and we should be able to book in a one-to-one demo for you if you want to see e-sign. It's also great that we in the trial area of e-sign, we can send you an envelope to actually see what it's like to send out to a client and get it signed. So yeah, with e-sign, we haven't got time to do it today, but effectively we can definitely add it in the next Power Hour for you.
Yeah, we will be doing Power Hour, more news on that later. So, and this is the problem with Power Hours, they're an hour long, and we can't extend them. It's beyond our power, I'm afraid. So we'll get to the next question in the Grand Pub quiz. So we are looking at, a lot of people are asking about how do they present the tax and accounts to the client so they don't come back with 100 questions and constantly be bothering you with stuff that could be covered. So I'm going to hit you with a question here.
Calculators at the ready.
Calculators at the ready, and no cheating. If you are self-employed with 30k profits, how much Class 4 NI would you be paying?
No
First
complications,
answer.
so we're not looking at anyone exempt for NI or has other income.
Straightforward.
Nothing like that. Straightforward. £30,000 profit, 22-23 tax year. How much Class 4 NI are you going to be
No
paying?
one in the chat yet has had a go. So
I want to know who's got TaxCalc open at the ready for the answer.
Marina.
Did you write down the answer, Nick?
In my notes, I have an amount, which is probably what the answer is to most of my tax queries that I have.
I think
we've got
Marina.
some different figures coming in though. We've got 3 different figures.
Oh.
I'm going to have to check.
Okay, we'll get two more bids and then we'll reveal the answer.
While Dean's working that out, what I'll do is I'll show you how to produce what we call as a TaxCalc print bundle in terms of a group of documents that you would want to produce to send to your clients that include a list of summaries, potentially maybe even including one of the summaries that Dean showed earlier in the tax return. So while Dean's working that out in one of his demo clients, because I think both of us assumed that each of us were going to produce the answer to that question. If I jump back into personal tax. So just close all my tabs I've got open at the top. We should have closed those before. But if I go to tax return production and open our best friend Ronald Chang up again, let's say I wanted to send a bundle of documents to my client to review, again, to try and minimise the number of questions you get rather than just sending the tax return. If you went to check and finish on the left-hand side, and I appreciate that you would normally click print or paper file return to go and potentially file tax return online with HMRC, but if you click print or paper file return, this is where you would have the ability to tick this box that says, do you want to include summaries? Okay, because if you tick that box that says, yes, I want to include summaries, you can say, I want to include the SA 302, I want to include the tax payment or repayment schedule and the tax calculation, potentially the SO 102, the calculation grid, office rentals. You can add as many different copies of the summaries on the left-hand side, this option here, into this report. If I then click Create Preview, it will include a copy of the tax return and schedules of summaries in a single PDF document for you to potentially save and send to your client, whether it be within eSign, whether it be sent and printed out or posted out via email or sent out via email. You'll be able to include a single PDF document with all of these summaries attached. And when I've been speaking to a lot of existing sites using TaxCalc, they weren't aware that you could produce this as a single document rather than having to go and print and save each document individually. So effectively, it's the print or paper file return on the left-hand side. Include the tick box to say include summaries, and then tick those down the summary page within there. So, Dean, do you have an answer?
I do. I do have an answer, but I'm actually really amazed that they're almost all unique. The answers that have gone firing into that chat, all with different figures. And as is often the case, the answer is the first one you thought of. So Marina, the first person to answer, 1,760. We're going to round it to 1,760. That is the correct figure. For everybody else, you come up with a different figure. Let me show you how that's calculated and how you can easily communicate that to your client or to your team so they can better understand how national insurance is calculated. So if let's go into a different client this time. Now Nick mentioned that you can send all these summaries out to each of your clients as part of a bundle of information when you're sending the tax return out. So I think everybody on the call will be familiar with the SA 302 summary. I'm sure you send every client a copy of that and the tax payment repayment summary. But we've got some new ones added in recently, again, coming out next week or shortly thereafter. I keep referring it to the Halloween release, but it's the autumn release. So we've got this National Insurance Contributions report right here. So this will show you how the Class 2 and Class 4 national insurance has been calculated for your client, which we think is as useful for your clients as it may well be for your team in finding out why the figure is £1,760 and 35 pence compared to perhaps what you thought it may have been. Of course, Class 4 is a little bit more tricky to calculate now. We've got these awkward 9.73% rather than a straight 9. But that is the answer there. So you've got this nice National Insurance Contributions report. And as I say, that's probably as useful internally as it is to send to clients. Another new report that we've got for you is the Pension Contributions Relevant UK Earnings Report. So Nick mentioned the check and finish messages earlier. If you enter pension contributions that are greater than the maximum, then you will get a warning to indicate that. But of course, that doesn't necessarily tell you how the maximum's been calculated and how much in excess you are with the pension contribution relief that you're trying to claim. So we've got this report now that shows the breakdown of the different income sources that make up that maximum relievable pension contributions and the pension figures that have been entered onto the tax return. So you can clearly see whether a maximum has been exceeded. So that's a good new report. Another report that I wanted to show that is pre-existing but we've tweaked, and that's the UK Land and Property report. So you may remember earlier I showed you the joint income reporting. Historically, I think we just showed the share of the income for your clients, so you would just see these figures on the right, but now we've enhanced it to include the property total and the share that's relevant to the client. So we think that's particularly useful for clients to be able to easily confirm that the right figures have gone onto the tax return. And there's something else I wanted to show you in terms of communicating information to your clients, and that is on the tax computation itself. So actually, if I just show you the so the SA302 summary, as it stands in the tax-free payment repayment summary, we've got fairly standard setup here. So we've got two lots of payments on account that were made during the year, and then we've got the balancing payment and two payments for next year. That's all well and good when there's nothing quirky going on the client record, such as late filing penalties or interest, or they've paid the wrong amount. So I just want to show you how you can enhance this report to accurately show the position, so that when you send this to the client and tell them how much to pay, it's not going to be different to what HMRC send them and tell them to pay because of these quirky things flying around on their accounts. So if I go into working out your tax and go to payments on account, there's a few different places and a few new bits that we've added. So here we've got the payments on account that are due, and then we've got the boxes to make the amounts that were actually paid. So it wouldn't be uncommon for my clients, if I told them the exact figure, they would just round it up or down. So perhaps they've actually paid 2,500. We want to accurately reflect that. They may have other credits that are sat on their account with HMRC that are reducing that liability. Maybe they've inadvertently paid some more money across. Clients do funny things. So I'll put £50 in there. Then what we've got new in the forthcoming release is the ability to itemise things and this other outstanding liabilities. So if I click on here, you might have something in here, let's say some interest on late paid tax. So that's just been hanging around on the account that the client needs to pay. Let's put a penalty on there as well. Maybe they've got a late filing penalty that hasn't been paid and it's just sat on their self-assessment account. Whatever these funny things that you might have floating around, or your client has floating around, if we put those in there and now go to the tax payment repayment summary, we can see that these are reflected in the figures. So we've got the adjusted second payment on account, that credit, and down here we've got an itemised list of things that are also outstanding on their self-assessment account. So this just makes sure that you're not in the position of telling the client one figure to pay and then HMRC asking for another, and then them coming back to you asking you questions about what the difference is.
And would you look at that with 2 minutes to go before the power hour is up? Dean finishes. Fantastic timing as ever, my friend. So unfortunately, we cannot get to the final one which we wanted to do, which was about onboarding clients. I think we'll probably bounce that to the next power hour. We're hoping to do one we may do one late November, but we'll certainly do one for Christmas. We're going to do a quite a fun, I think, catch up. So everyone can just kind of wind down before Christmas as well. But we'll hopefully get another power hour in November, where we will cover e-sign and we will cover the new release in the Halloween release for Practice Manager Plus. But thank you very, very much for coming. We love meeting you. We love hearing from you. We hope you like meeting us. If you learned something new today, let us know in the chat. Just write down what thing you learned today, because we like to feel that we're doing a job in informing our customers. Please tell anyone you know who's a TaxCalc customer or not a TaxCalc customer who want to find out what the fuss is all about to come along to the next power hour. We'll be sending out information with that within the next couple of weeks, so you can find out when it is at the new time of 2 o'clock rather than 2:30, because we like to avoid the school rush. All of those of you who have to go and get the kids, I would go now because it's 3. But otherwise, thank you very much once again for coming, and we will see you again in a few weeks' time. Take care.